hopefully you've all had a chance to see the exhibition upstairs. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. And it's probably a first. It's the first alphabet exhibition that you've had of your prints. So it's a good start to the event. And I think we're going to talk. We don't rehearse these things, so I think we can promise you absolutely no intellectual rigour. We're going to talk about things we like, and honestly, the first question is irresistible. It's how did your interest in delight and in alphabets grow, and where did it start?
It would have started at Gravesend School of Art, and I think Rory's explanation of me being a graphic designer needs a little more explanation, because I went to junior art department at the age of 13 at Gravesend, then did the intermediate examination where my craft was Roman lettering.
Which you could choose.
You could choose your craft. It could be wood engraving, Roman lettering, silversmithing.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to go on towards being a painter, but I was advised by the staff at Gravesend that I wouldn't make a living as a painter to do the commercial art course.
Yes.
So I took their advice. I got a year into the National Diploma of Commercial Art, as it was then called. And somebody else at Gravesend suggested I tried for the Royal College halfway through the course. The other staff advised me not to. I wasn't ready, but I did. And Robin Darwin happened to see my portfolio, and I'd put one painting in, and they accepted me in the painting school. So I then had to do national service. So I arrived at the painting school at the age of 24. No, 21, never having been a painting student. So I'm really this kind of rogue bastard figure, you know, that I'm a half-formed graphic designer. I only did half the course, so I don't know where I'd got to, but it means as a graphic designer, I'm a rogue. You know, I can do things that other graphic designers wouldn't do. And as a painter, I'm also informed by the graphic design, the fact that I can letter.
Exactly. When you look at your paintings at the Royal College, and even before that, we'll come on to a bit before that with Lily Box maybe, but your early paintings, almost without exception, include lettering, like on the balcony, children reading comics, the entry into Jerusalem. Do you know all these early paintings? They're very figurative. I hadn't realised maybe the influence that the American Ashcan School there'd been an exhibition at the Tate, which
the magic realists, really. The Ashcan a little bit.
That's true.
The magic realists, and Ben Shahn particularly, Bernard Perlin, who painted that wonderful painting called Orthodox Boys at the Tate Home. And English painters at the same time. Because a great piece of advice that I read was that Ben Shahn said was that you can't invent a stone. If you're painting a stone, you should get a stone and paint it. You can't invent it. And it's the same with lettering. It's the same with most art.
So your paintings at that time were very figurative, well, they always have been really, but very detailed, and badges always featured, and comics and things. And I suppose the first painting I ever saw of yours, literally the year I started as a student in Liverpool, was the John Moores show, and your self-portrait with badges, which won the Junior Award first prize. David Hockney won second prize in the Senior Awards because he was younger.
That's right,
yeah. And William Scott, I think, won the real. It was a good year.
It was a very good year. And Lucian Freud.
And Lucian Freud was in it.
Lucian Freud's painting after in the show was a beautiful early painting of Caroline Blackwood lying in a bed in Paris and Lucian looking down at her. Yes. And it was for sale for something incredibly cheap at the time.
It's
I didn't buy it, I had no money, but...
actually, his early painting, we're digressing as we always do, his early paintings are also very flat on.
Well, he was an enormous influence,
Yeah,
early Freud. Yeah.
I saw, it must have been a wartime 40s painting. He can't have been much more than sort of 16, 17 of, I mean, there's Spitfires over
That's
over
right,
the countryside, which were
It was a child picture, really.
yeah, really interesting. But you sort of have kept up this sort of thread of alphabets or of lettering that has developed. And I suppose, in some ways, has it grown out of your collecting as well? When you see upstairs, there's...
Yes, I think the explanation of it coming here was that as I've got older, I'm 84 now, so I have to admit that I'm kind of on the home stretch. So there are certain groups of pictures that I wanted to show, and I kind of hinted around a bit. And for instance, I've just had a show at the end of last year at Waddington Gallery of the portraiture. Well, these were private portraits that were done, went into a collection, were never seen. So, and I wanted them to be seen. So I kind of sniffed around the National Portrait Gallery a bit and hinted a bit, but it was never picked up on.
Or maybe I got it wrong, because Jane Wan asked me if she thought that show would come here, and I said I didn't think so, because...
No, it was just, eventually, I thought, no, I just wanted want them to be seen.
Yeah.
So just a one-off showing.
Great show.
It wasn't a museum show, and some new work as well. But all those pictures that were in private collections now have been available. And the other shows were a show. The alphabet show was kind of sitting almost as a package. There's a photography show waiting to be shown. That I was taken by Peter Palumbo, in fact. Chrissy and I were taken to Vegas in 1984 to see a boxing match between Tommy Hearns and Mervyn Hagler. And it was billed as the fight, and it was one of the greatest fights ever. And I took a photographic record of the trip, which has never been seen.
You showed them to me about 20 years ago.
Yeah, but it's never been seen in public.
Never been seen,
So they're now ready.
Wonderful.
So there was this group of exhibitions that I wanted to go out there. So I took it upon myself to organise it. So when this came up, and you talked to here, and I proposed that show, and it tied in perfectly with the fact that the Sandberg show was on, and the next show is Fiona Banner. And I didn't realise the kind of interest here in graphics. So it was a perfect show to
Absolutely.
bring.
And it's interesting how, back to collecting a bit, and we were saying, was it at Gravesend Edith Marks came for a term as a stand-in? Edith Marks, I'm sure you'll know, textile designer, graphic designer, writer of books on folk art and collector of folk art.
Designed the fabrics for the underground.
She did lots of
That's what
underground
most people say.
tube things, and but she came to Gravesend when you must have been about 15, I suppose.
Yeah, I would have been about 15. She would have been in her 20s?
Yeah.
Late 20s.
I suppose so.
Yeah, she would have been young.
She wouldn't be much more than that. But she lived very near us. I remember her showing me a drawing that you'd done of a shop front when you were a student and she was teaching. And it was on the Thames. She was very interested in, she knew all these ship's captains who collected ship's figureheads, and they used to sort of beat their foghorns at her as they went past. And things like
Well, there's
that.
one particular ship's captain who as you say, has a wonderful collection of figureheads. And Gravesend was opposite Tilbury, which was the Orient line. So almost every day a ship would leave from Tilbury, kind of right in front of the art school, going to China or India or wherever they were going. And he always blew this hooter to bid them bon voyage. And it was a private collection. And Enid Marks organised that us students were taken to see it.
Yeah.
In fact, she then asked me to do a decorative letter to be given to him as a thank you.
It's in the book.
Is it in the book? Which never got sent.
No, it's a most wonderful border. My book, it's the most wonderful border, but no thank you inside it.
No, the letter wasn't written.
No, it wasn't
very
written.
influenced by Borden at
It
the time.
sure was.
It's sort of layers of watercolour.
Yeah, but interestingly, it was the only drawing of her students that she'd ever kept.
Really?
Was that.
I didn't know that.
And she was obviously a great influence in collecting folk art. She was one of the earliest people collecting naive.
Absolutely.
And whether she was well, you've always said she was an influence on you.
We
and
enormous
after that,
influence
lettering.
and she became a friend later when we were both RDIs.
Yes.
She liked to drink then later on, and I did too. So after any kind of RDI dinner, we always got very drunk. A group of us.
Yeah.
Betty Jackson was another.
Yeah. She was.
So that was a big influence, yeah. And I saw the Black Eyed Peas and Lemonade exhibition in 51.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, I know that when you were quite young, your mum was very keen on going to wrestling matches and going to the cinema, and obviously that was an influence on you. And certainly I can imagine you seeing wrestling posters, wrestling match posters would have been, because they're almost a branch of folk art in their own right, actually, aren't they? But did you go to art galleries as well at that sort of age, or?
Not so much, because as I say, I was 13 when I went to Gravesend first. So that would have been 1945, and there was this kind of after the war. There was this resurgence of interest in entertainment. I mean, everything pretty much stopped. Your football didn't, but most things stopped. So my mum used to go to wrestling and the Speedway. We went to West Ham Speedway, and everything came back in a way. So that was the interest in popular culture.
And it's lasted. I mean,
it's still there.
It's certainly a branch
if
of
wrestling went on, I would still be going.
But in fact, what were you saying about? He was up a minute ago in the first alphabet series that you did. How did that series happen? The 70s one.
I think it was done at Coriander Studios, and probably
was it you instigating it, or
they were in Chiswick at that point. I probably bumped into Brad Fane, and we talked about making some prints, and it was put together. From my collection,
this
pretty much.
Series,
That's a.
This one,
that's G for good. There are a few kind of jokes in there. You know, that K is for the King, which is Elvis Presley. And T is for
this must be the
Beatles.
Yes.
People wonder why Beatles.
I don't know if you've in the three-dimensional alphabet in the beginning of the show upstairs. Have you worked out what O is for? August. Yes.
People are having trouble with R because it's a rather odd little figure of a rabbit.
Yes.
It's a little
well
plastic
done.
figure.
But
and somebody had trouble with K for night. They didn't realise that night was spelled with a K.
Okay.
Which is understandable.
Yep. And again, a big interest. We're looking at, we can see these pictures on this screen here, but again, hence the wrestling images, but early Beatles.
I mean, that's a photographic version of an earlier painting done in 63 of the Beatles, and so recreated using the original photographs. This one is relatively politically incorrect now. It wasn't in 91. Luckily, we've because of the arrangement, the dwarfs and midgets is very high, so it kind of doesn't count as being politically incorrect. I mean, this is done with great
Kendo
sympathy.
Nagasaki, and he's the wrong way around. Is he?
Well, I was just explaining to Brian before we talked that Terence Donovan took the photograph of Kendo Nagasaki, and we printed the whole edition, and then somebody said, it's the wrong way round. It's holding the sword on the wrong side. So nobody noticed kind of photographically that it was the wrong way round. So we reprinted. So I think I said we'll keep the original edition as the wrong way round edition.
Yes.
But then they were destroyed, I think.
Yeah. But again, this demonstrates.
Well, this alphabet you were asking me about again before. I mean, with this one, it was a matter. Each main letter is a different font,
Typeface, yeah.
different typeface,
Yeah.
and then I just collected all the information I could possibly find about that letter. So it's this semaphore and the existing children's books that I broke up and used each page. And you just various.
This is a signwriter's manual.
Yes, that's
with additions from you. Yeah. But, so they're irresistible to look at.
Yes, sure.
Is my problem. But it's really interesting. Peter and I worked together since the 80s on various projects, and it's again something you've been asked to talk about is how you store your imagery. But I've been working on projects, and Peter's described to me what a finished image is going to look like, a collaged image, long before the bits that are going to make up the image have either been found or that you are going out to find. And I've always thought, how do you do it?
Well, at the moment, that situation would be that there was an incredible exhibition at the Royal Academy about Joseph Cornell called Wanderlust.
Yes.
And I've been an enormous fan of Cornell really for a very long time, and I owned a very good one for a while, and I still own a collage. But it's his was a very sad story that he wanted to travel and never left a very small area of New York State. I mean, he'd go from his home in Flushing down to New York to buy stuff.
Yep.
But he adored Europe, and he adored kind of 19th century ballet dancers and things like that. So what I'm doing now, and collecting the stuff for, is a series called Joseph Cornell's Holiday. So it's an extension of the Marcel Duchamp World Tour. And at the moment I'm making them now, and he's doing all the things. The other sad thing was that he never consummated any relationship, and he fell in love every day. He fell in love with a waitress, or he just was constantly in love, and it was never reciprocated. So I'm surrounding him by lots of pretty girls, and he's having a great time all over Europe.
So you're a storyteller, which is...
So some of them are made already.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. As prints or as paintings?
As collages. Probably eventually there'll be prints, but I don't want to be thinking these are going to be prints. I just want to make them as art, as collages.
Which as interesting. We worked together on lots of things that did turn out as collages that were then turned into commercially printed things, which were quite interesting. But I was just looking. I mean, you're the neatest person I know when it comes to collecting images. That they're stored and filed, and they're sort of instantly accessible. It seems to me. I'm pretty good at storing other people's images that I own, but of my own things I'm absolutely useless. But as you've found a way of maybe recycling the things that you collect into and interest you into,
this
is wonderful.
Alphabet, certainly.
I mean, I was looking at mine turn into books, which is something we've been doing for the last 10 years. But this is a great way to sort of review your collections and
yes, and of course they exist as original artwork too, as a collage.
Yeah.
The other exhibition that I didn't explain earlier, that in this kind of list of planned exhibitions, I've never really had a drawing show, and Leslie Waddington didn't ever want to have one at the gallery. Yeah. So I'm now planning one for next year, probably at Waddington again. Leslie died sadly, who was my dealer for many years, but Stefan Cousteau has taken over the gallery, and he feels it should be a museum show, but like the other shows, it never got there. So it'll probably be at Waddington next year.
But at least it's an instigation for getting it on the road to
and showing the drawings, because a lot of the drawings have never been seen.
I mean, I can imagine the alphabet show travelling for as long as anybody.
It'll probably just be here, I think. Yeah.
It'll probably
Well, maybe the prints may go on.
Yeah, because they could easily do it. I mean, there's been the Everlasting World Steinberg tour, which
that's true.
Which must be packaged up, shipped to. If it's Tuesday, it must be London. If it's Wednesday, it must be Amsterdam.
I think there are a couple of shows touring.
We could do that. Yeah, we could do that. But the first, you put the first alphabet set together. The next set, the more recent ones. How did they happen?
Well, the found ones.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, really, I suppose it was just that, as you said, there were various collections of alphabet material. Some of which is in the showcase upstairs. The most recent being the Messens alphabet, which is, as you know, as a book finder, is a coup. But it's mainly children's books. But I mean, I think it was triggered by a beautiful French book where each letter has clowns climbing over it. And I thought, well, that should be seen all together. And so took each page and scanned it and made it into one image. And it came out of that process.
There's a piece in the show that says, actually above the case of some of your collections, as part of, it's a series called Appropriating. Which, I don't know if you remember upstairs, is Appropriating Jack Pearson. Does everyone know the story of Jack Pearson?
Well, Jack Pearson is an American artist, gay. A lot of his work is about being gay. But he makes the most wonderful word pieces that hang on the wall that might say a word. And it's big letters that he's bought in kind of graveyards of letters in Vegas. So they might be 3 foot tall. And they say wonderful words. And it's something that I'd done already in a way earlier on, but I wanted to do this appropriation series, but I kind of got his permission.
Did you go to meet him in New York?
No, we had dinner in London. So I wanted to make it be all right to do it. And the first person who set up the meeting told him, and he said, it's okay because I like his work, but it really spooks me that he's doing it. So one of them is called Spooking Jack Pearson, and it's in ghost letters, with different white letters. So I think the one here is appropriating. And then there was one in homage to Jack Pearson, one called Ripping Off Jack Pearson. And there were about 10 eventually, including Spooking.
The scale of them is really very nice because they're
all that size. One is stenciling.
It is, isn't
stenciling Jack Pearson.
It's just one of those things that works beautifully, isn't it?
It's a nice series.
It's a very nice series.
I'd like them to have been seen together. In fact, I still had 3, but 2 of them had just been promised to a different show.
Oh, right.
So it's really a token one here.
Yeah, I haven't seen them for a while, but they look tremendous. And the more recent alphabets have been developing into using quite interesting materials. I mean, the latest being LED. Are they LED lights on the?
Yes, the newest prints. In making prints, I felt I was slightly overproducing prints. In the 60s, when there was that enormous kind of vogue for silkscreen printing, I stayed away from it. I felt in some curious way it was immoral. I don't know why. R.B. Cheetah made hundreds of prints, and Palazzi made lots of prints. And I stayed on the edge of it, but then I got totally immersed and involved, and I felt I'd slightly overproduced. So the only reason now I want to make prints is to extend printmaking. So we've done a series using 3D printing, and this very newest series. We talked at CCA about possibilities of the next prints, and I said, well, let's you could use lights, and I used a lot of glitter.
Yeah.
I used lots of diamond dust. I've done a whole portfolio of diamond dust for Paul Stolper. So really, I just want to extend the boundaries of printmaking. And in fact, out of that series, another series I'm working on, which is open-ended and never-ending, it is called Ways of Making, and it comes out of while I illustrated Under Milkwood, which took me 28 years, and Brian was involved.
We worked on it for 25 of them.
Yeah, 25 of them. We kept missing that. We had the rights to do it, and kept missing it, and I kept doing more and more.
2012, New Year's Day, we suddenly thought, next year's the centenary of Dylan Thomas.
And that made
if we don't get it done...
Well, it's still not finished, because I'm still working. Well,
it's never ending. It was one of those projects.
But we did the book, didn't we?
We did the book.
Which is in the bookshop, in fact. But anyway, out of that, while I was doing that, while I was reading it a lot still, there's one line which says, from a finger bowl of primrose grows, and it's very poetic. It doesn't relate to anything else. It's just thrown in as almost as a visual image. So what I'm doing is I happen to have a primrose in a bowl on my desk. So I photographed it about 30 times, and it's an ongoing series of doing it in every possible way it can be done.
Medium,
every medium. And of course, mediums are being invented every day. And we've got as far as now a lenticular, a time-stop film of it, of a different primrose, but you're growing or dying, whatever we decide to do. And that's open-ended. Now, I've done about 30 so far, including wood engraving, a lino cut, and etching. So that's a fascinating
I mean, it's something that I think you talked about years and years ago, but as you say, there's a new medium almost every day. And
it works by having one set is the prototype. So with the paintings, for instance, I planned to do a limited edition, but it didn't work. So there's one master set. So there's only one oil painting and one watercolour. But then if it's a print, it can open up into an edition. So there's the prototype set, and then something like the silk screen will be editioned and can be a separate print.
Has it got a date for completion?
Never. It'll never be completed.
When will we see bits of it? It's another exhibition.
Maybe never as well, It'll be shown sometime.
It will.
But I have no plans for it. And in fact, it's very much put on the back burner at the moment while I do other things. But I go back to it every so.
What are the other things at the moment?
Well, I'm having a show in Sweden in 2 weeks, and I'm having a show in Paris in October, and 10 of the new Under Milkwood watercolours I'm working on for that. There were 20, and I realised I wouldn't finish them all. So
I can remember 25 years ago, when you'd been working on it for a bit, you said the idea was we'd do the dreams in watercolour, the portraits in pencil, and we'd do a couple of dreams and a couple of portraits, and you've done a couple of portraits, and locations in collage. And over the years, it's developed into every dream, every character, every location, and now it's every line, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Which is over 100 illustrations.
I think within the first 2 pages, there are something like 20 illustrations. And in the book, they didn't all get in, did they?
Not at all.
I showed it in Calder at the National Museum, and then in St David's, and it rather like the other shows. I mean, I had plans for it that didn't work out. I mean, the British Museum said they would show it, and so I dropped away from asking anyone else. And then I think they realised apparently they can only show for a temporary show. They can only show work they own, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
And they don't own
because they've done the Richard Hamilton.
That's right. Well, that's in their collection. So they had to apologise and say, look, sorry, we can't do it. So it was too late then. I tried the British Library, and this all happened in the centenary year. So now the centenary year is done and gone. It's in stores and it'll come back out, and hopefully I'll show it in London and New York.
Yes, yeah, it'd be wonderful.
But that did have that had a deadline. And eventually, once we realised it was the anniversary, the first deadline was the book,
yes,
and the second deadline was the show. Yeah. So everything in the show is different to the book, because I developed it. Yeah. But this other series has no ending. It can't,
yes,
because there'll be when I stop working on it for whatever reason, there'll be other methods being invented.
Which is good. And paintings? Are the paintings happening at the moment?
Well, again, with this kind of spirit of this maybe being the home run, Patrick Caulfield...
I've been hearing this since you were the artist in residence at the National Gallery.
No, that was retirement.
That was different. Yes,
that was my
when you were
announced
64,
retirement.
was the...
Well, the show was called, the show at the National Gallery, I was artist in residence for 2 years, and during that time I intended to finish a picture I've been working on for some time of the Tarzan family.
Yes, yeah.
But the Tarzan family, all represented by famous people. So Tarzan was Michelangelo's David,
yes,
but pink coloured,
yes,
and blonde hair.
Yeah. Little loincloth.
A little leather loincloth, yeah. And, a little suede loincloth,
yes,
like Johnny Weissmuller.
Yep.
Jane was the Mona Lisa, but smiling. I mean, this sounds crazy as I describe it. Boy was a prince by Titian,
yes,
a boy's Titian head. But there
Cheetah.
were no chimpanzees in the history of art. No. Lots of monkeys, and somebody here may be able to say, oh yes, there is. There's a Rembrandt with a chimpanzee. But I couldn't find one. And around that time, there was an article in the Sunday Times that Cheetah, the original chimpanzee, was alive and well, retired to Palm Springs, had taken up painting, and there was a great photograph of him. What he liked to do in the evening, that his owner, or keeper, who was the nephew of the man who brought him to the States all those years ago, would take him for a ride every night in Palm Springs on a scooter, and there's a photograph of Cheetah wearing a cowboy hat, smoking a cigar, and holding a glass of whiskey. And every evening they'd go on this kind of excursion. Anyway, I thought, this has got to be my Cheetah, this is him. So I contacted the Sunday Times, and they couldn't help, and I contacted, eventually I got the phone number of the keeper.
Yes.
So I phoned him and we talked about it. He said, do you want to say hello to Cheetah? And I said, yeah, that'd be nice. So I said, hello, Cheetah. And this kind of chattering noise came at the other end.
Wonderful.
So eventually, it's a long story, but I said...
Keep going.
So I said, well, look, I'd like to share the show with him, because we're on exactly the same trajectory. He was working on a show to be shown and would pay kind of for his retirement, pay for a new run and stuff like that, a new cage. I just bought my studio, so I was setting up a studio. So our trajectory, our paths were identical. So the show is called Now We Are 64. And the introduction, as you went in, it had my chronology and his chronology. So we were both born in 1932, and then the various shows we'd had. And eventually, the end of the story is that when he had the show, it was billed as shown in the National Gallery. and apparently, the fact is that he couldn't have lived that long, apparently. Oh, really? And there were 2 or 3 different Cheetahs.
I was going to say, because every now and again you
one
hear...
of them died last year.
Yeah, I was going to say what you've heard.
Supposedly the same one. But one of the Cheetahs died last year. And I think my Cheetah... Oh, no, a Cheetah was alive. But I don't think it was the original. It's an expose. Yes. Anyway, back to graphic design.
Well, I don't know, he was probably a graphic designer as well, but now where are... So, more alphabets to come, do you think, or are you still collecting letters?
Well, I'm still making the single pieces.
Yeah.
So I just asked Chrissy, who's gone off to look around the. My wife didn't come. She's heard me so often, and it's usually the same thing. that my wife and daughter have gone around the charity shops to see what they can. But I asked her to find any small letters she can. And actually, I'm making some jewellery.
Oh, are you?
So one of them is a little silver square with an alphabet. We're about to cast it. So I am still making alphabets.
For commercial?
Well, I'm doing it with Louisa Guinness, but I've made a series of unique necklaces.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, one is I've made a whole collection of broken little ivory elephants, and it's called White Elephant.
Oh, that's nice.
But they've got missing trunks, missing tusks and things like that. And I did another one using a Victorian chatelaine. So it had a pair of scissors and a pencil and stuff that you could actually use. So, and that's an ongoing, and so they're unique. But the alphabet, it's about that square, and it's influenced by a wonderful Jasper John silver sculpture he did of an alphabet, and it'll just hang around the neck, kind of in the spirit of Calder.
Yeah. I was just, that's just thinking, every now and again I see a piece of Calder jewellery, about that big, little square.
Why are they so wonderful?
Why are they so wonderful?
Yeah.
They are, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
But even more scary is the price tag when you look at them. And then you look at Peggy Guggenheim's bed in the Guggenheim Museum in Venice. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a bed head made by Alexander Calder of bits of wire, silver wire, and cutouts. And if you broke it down into individual bits of jewellery, it would be the most expensive thing on the planet. I don't know why, but both Peter and I, as we arrived, I don't know if you noticed outside the shop here, there's a poster done by for the Stedelijk of Calder, of a Calder exhibition. It seems we both independently said, how much is it?
When I was last here.
It's not for sale, so we didn't get it. But so who's make? Are they handmade, these little bits of?
Louisa Guinness has now taken it over.
Yeah.
So the originals she put together.
Yeah.
I think she sold one of them. Mm-hmm. She sold the chatelaine one.
Yeah.
And one day I'll show that there's a little group of original sculptures.
Yeah.
But I'll certainly. I've done some cufflinks with her.
Yeah.
And
I've seen those.
Yeah, some other Elvis cufflinks and things like that. But this will be a small edition.
Yeah. But they're not. It's on my mind because it's obviously jewellery's in the air. We're doing some jewellery based on Revilius wood engravings.
Oh, really?
For the Fry Art Gallery in Saffron Walden, which I've worked with for years and years. And they're going to be laser cut out of acrylic. We'd love to do some in silver, but you can't laser. You can't laser silver unless somebody knows the process how to do. We're still trying to make how to get the laser cuts are absolutely stunning. I just didn't believe we could get
it's extraordinary
the amount of quality out of it. But I was looking, and there's some very nice jewellery in the shop here of handmade bits of acrylic boats, and there's one actually of the Pavilion. Have you noticed them? They just the neck sounds a bit like your necklaces, the silver. I'm looking forward to seeing those. But
it might be worth just describing some of the other work I've been doing.
Just say
because in the last few years I've decorated the ferry in Liverpool as a kind of dazzle ship. It does look nice.
It is fabulous. I spent my childhood going backwards and forwards from Liverpool to Birkenhead on.
Well, for that, that was meant. I mean, it was commissioned in the year of the centenary of the First World War starting.
Yes,
so it started off being quite sombre and very grey and black and white, and I think it said 1914, 1918 stenciled onto it. Then we kind of moved out of that year and it opened up a bit. So it eventually now is pretty much a kind of pop art statement. But
and again, probably one of the best bits of sort of publicity for Liverpool that you could possibly hope for.
And the
really
men
wonderful.
from is it Harlem Wolf? No.
Camel Laird.
Camel Laird painted it.
Yep.
And
Oh, did
also-
they? Yeah. Did they take it out of the water to do it?
They
or-
put it into dry dock to do the lower part. And the story about that is that on the original design, a lot of the upper cabin work was the most beautiful magenta, and they said they couldn't match it.
Yes.
And I think they just didn't want a pink ferry. The men said, no, look, this is taking it too far. We can't have pink on the But I recently, you know, when Michael Craig Martin recently got knighted, I said that it was services to magenta.
A very fine.
I don't know whether he knows I've said it.
He will now.
I mean, it's such a wonderful colour.
Absolutely.
I did a couple of prints.
Did you
do? There's just two of them saying, has Michael Craig Martin got all the magenta?
It's interesting. Palazzi in must be the early 70s did a series of prints. Who's afraid of lime green and sugar pink?
Did he? Anyway, so the other job recently was to do sort of livery for a Bentley, a Continental GT, which they gave to a charity auction, and I made a design for that. So that was a nice.
Is it done?
It's done and sold, and sold.
Who bought it?
I've been saying a Canadian man, but Chrissy tells me it's an Englishman who lives in Rome, who collects vintage Bentleys, has never bought a new Bentley, but his daughter was about to get married and he wanted to drive her to the wedding in the Bentley, because it's got a big heart on the bonnet.
Oh, fantastic.
And then the carpets in the law courts I did.
Which we
so these are all things that just don't get seen.
These are quite often things that... I was going to ask you about the Mersey Ferry. Yeah. Do you do the drawings, the designs for those on using a computer? Yeah. No.
I work with them at CCA. I work with a man called Ed. Yeah. And I work with Dan Fain at Dark Matter. Yeah. And we just, the job I've just finished this week is a wrap for the is it the Meridian Hotel? No, what's it called?
It could be, yeah.
No, it's the one opposite Gillian, you can help me.
Hotels?
What? The Mandarin,
the
Mandarin chain. And they have an advertising scheme called I'm a Fan, and so it doesn't say what they're a fan of. I did one big mural that was 64 metres long, that was in Hong Kong, in Shanghai, I think. And that was taking all these people that have been a star, taking the images that existed and putting a fan into each of their hands. Anyway, I've just done a great group to go on the front of the hotel in London, which will be like 60 feet high.
But you source the images for these things, and then
these were the existing photographs.
But then working with
Ed.
With Ed, and he cuts them out. And we did that.
So the ferry was done on the computer,
same way,
which was very deceptive because we were working from plans. So from the side, I think at the front we put a black and white diagonal, and from the side, there is no front, but the front view, it's almost as wide as it is long. So this suddenly became an important feature. But it's fascinating.
But it worked. I'm really curious about how you're working in 3 dimensions.
Well, then again, the men painting it adapted it.
Did they? They did it beautifully.
So where you got the kind of bump rail, whatever it's called, around the side, it actually goes in very sharp to the water. So what I designed didn't work because it was already at an angle. So there's a process of me saying what I wanted, Ed making it possible on the computer, and then the painters adapting it themselves to make it work.
you didn't give them full-size drawings.
No, they work from age. No, there was
Sometimes we do.
a certain
in
amount
small
it was
sections.
quite, there's a certain amount of kind of flexibility.
It really worked beautifully. I can remember, it's a job that we worked on with you. It was actually in 1999. It was the beginnings of using computers.
Yeah.
When the Foreign Office
Oh God, yeah.
rang up one day. We designed stuff for the Foreign Office. We should tell this story, can't we? They rang up and said, "We want to do the Sgt Peppers cover for the new millennium. Can you talk to Peter Blake about it?" Was the message. And
I've never worked on the computer.
no, and we talked about it and thought how to do it, because the original Sgt Pepper's album were all life-size, three-dimensional cutouts, weren't they, with photographic prints stuck on, you colouring them. But we did this in a computer. We kept expecting. Well, it was a long, drawn-out process, and time was of the essence, because it had to be ready for
the millennium.
For the millennium.
You can't stop that.
Yeah. Well, it almost did. We did it, and it was done in our office with you looking over everybody's shoulders at people cutting out bits on computers. And we hadn't done it before. It was a whole new thing. Now it's sort of taken for granted that that's how you do it. Along the way, the press, Hello magazine, got wind of it and did a page spread on it. The Daily Mail printed it and rang up our office. We put all these people in. We kept expecting the Foreign Office to, or somebody in high places, to say which people we put in. And we kept saying, "What do you want?" Well, you choose them. So we thought, okay, we'll do artists. We'll put Barbara Hepworth next to Rachel Whiteread. They'll go well together. The Queen was next to Red Rum.
And a cyclist.
Did we do cyclists?
Yeah, I think there's a cyclist.
We kept, occasionally they'd say, "We've got to have a young rap artist in," because the British Council said that. We've never heard of them since or before or after. But anyway, we put all. But we said, "Do you want to put names on all these people? Or say who all these people are?" And they kept, "No, let people." This was a big print to go to every embassy and consulate around, British consulate around the world, to be handed out. I don't know, they could do what they like with them, I suppose. But the Daily Mail said, somebody from the Daily Mail rang up and said, "Can you tell us who all these people are? We're doing a prize thing and we're giving a bottle of champagne for people that can name them all." And we said, "Yes, we'll tell you on January the 10th. And they never came back. And that's right. But it was one of those things that probably, for better or worse, got more publicity than any job you could imagine. I mean, the Independent Colour magazine did a whole sort of piece on it, didn't they, on New Year's Day? It was on or was it on a Sunday? Anyway, it was one of those things. But that was the beginnings of using computers, which was, and it's gone on from there, which is really interesting.